Everybody, this is Mr. Fugu with Mr. Fugu Data Science, and today we will be doing a how-to tutorial for sending data from R to Postgres. As always, if you like this content, the code will be provided on my GitHub at Mr. Fugu Data Science. If you would like to see any of my previous videos, please go to Mr. Fugu Data Science on YouTube. I provided the code today because I wanted to show how you can send data frames and CSV files to Postgres from R. I wanted to also show how we can query from R to Postgres as well as export files from Postgres back into R as data frames. We will be using DSN credentials today. What that means is we're basically hiding the password and user information so it's not for safety and privacy. We will be creating a YAML file which will be a config.yml. If you're interested in learning more DSN setup and R to Postgres links are provided. We will use the config library to access our credentials that we're creating privately, and that will interface with the DBI connection going to our database. We will use random names and the generator libraries to create our fake information today, and if you would like to utilize markdown format download file, that's here. Now, from the random names in the documentation, I found that we're creating factors for race and gender, and here they are. Now, I decided to create a first name with 6,000 entries where we're going to obtain the complete data, and that means that we're going to take the race and gender, whereas the last name we did not do this. And we did a replication without replacement for the last names because we're putting this together as a list and ultimately into a data frame, and I wanted to minimize the amount of occurrences of overlapping. So we need to do some imports real quick. And we'll look at our data frame, and as you know, there are no column labels here, so we need to take care of that and create column labels. Here we go. And then depending on your analysis, you may want to keep this as factors, but today we're not doing any analysis and we're just doing exploration, so I'm going to convert those. And what I did was I took the gender and the race columns, and I created labels, which would be the male and female, and then the race. Put that in back into a data frame, and this is what that looks like. And change the factors to characters. For creating our secure credentials, there's a few ways that we can do this. We could integrate the security without a DSN. We can encrypt our credentials such as a key ring that you can do on a Mac. I'm not sure if Windows has this capability. We can use config files. We can do a .r envirod file. We can do R commands where you would do like whatever you're looking for followed by a $sign and then whatever you're calling. And then we would have a prompt also if you're using the RStudio IDE, where it's just basically like a login prompt. And you can look at this documentation and provide a link for further explanation. To put this together, you need to be very specific and retain the config.yml name. You can't do config underscore, config o2, anything else, because it won't read in. Also, you need to keep your indentations very consistent. There's packages to do YAML formatting. Some people may be familiar with it, I am not. So what I did was I did 2 indentations on mine, and we start with the file called, we'll just say default, and then I just made a data warehouse because I was taking some of this formatting from online documentation. But what we do need here is the driver, the user, the password, the host, the database name, and whatever port. And this port can change depending on availability. If it's busy, this may change from time to time, from what I've read. If your config file is not set in the directory you're working for, excuse me, it's quite late, you will need to do a use parent equals true, where you're going to look at parent directories. Now, let's create our connection where we use require RPOSTGRESQL. We use the driver which is calling it. We are using config :get, which is taking the config library, calling the specific function get, and we're looking for our credentials which are stored in warehouse. Then we're doing the db connect, which is creating the connection from our driver and our user credentials. From there, we can look at what tables are available currently. This is what I've created previously, but what we can do is we could delete that, and we could say, okay, let's go back and let's create it. So you can create, you can delete. We could say, all right, there's no more tables in here now. Enough fun and games. We know that we're actually in the database with our credentials. So what we need to do is, I'm calling my table today fake R users, where I have the columns as gender, race, first and last name, and they're all text. We're using a db send query where we're using our connection, and our statement is basically pasted in, similar to if you took this in the command line and provided a semicolon at the end. Now we're going to count the rows which are in our user table, where we're taking our query and we're fetching it. But currently it's empty because we haven't populated it. But if you notice, you're provided a data frame when you're asking these queries, which is something that's interesting. Now, if your data frame was originally capitalized, this causes problems for sending your data. And so I had to go back originally and provide lowercase. So that's something you should be aware of. So let's write our data frame where we're taking the connection, the table, the value is our data frame that we're calling. We are not taking the labels from that, and we're appending. Now, what we're doing here is checking what is in our. Let me back up. We're selecting everything from our users. We're fetching it. We're taking the remaining records, and we're looking at the head of the file that we're bringing back in to look at. So we're verifying that the data that we transferred was actually transferred, where we can also look at how many rows we actually have also. So we have 6,000 rows, so we know that that actually worked, which is great. Okay. Now, an alternate way of going from a data frame to Postgres is utilization of the SQLDF library, which I provided, and anyone who is eager enough can look into that and see what the pros and cons are using this. One thing I did note, let me actually open that up. Let me show you something. You're going to have an option where you're providing your credentials. Let it call specifically. I did remember that, and I'm not sure how you'd actually provide your config file for that, which would be kind of an issue. So let's see if I can find it real quick. If not, just be aware of that. Let's see if I can find it real quick for brevity. Nevertheless, look into that if you're going to use it. Now, we're going from CSV to Postgres now, so we're taking my data frame, writing as a CSV, calling it this, not taking the labels. I listed the path so I can see if this file is within this path. Then what I had to do was take the library tools, find the absolute path, print it out, take this path, put it in here so I could send the query. I couldn't figure out, you know, in the short time how to actually take this whole thing and put it in here because you're calling a string, and I was having issues with this. So that's create this, but something you need to note here, when you're creating the CSV here, if you're not a super user, you're going to get an error. So now since we sent this, we're basically duplicating our data here. So originally we had 12, now we have 12,000 rows. So what we need to do also is we need to start disconnecting from our database, and I might have some errors because I'm still trying to learn this. Yeah, because I still have some open connections that I need to close, and I'm not sure if I just do these, and I think that's not all of it. But in the end, you need to close your connections to free up your resources. But that's the end of my video. I left a few resources that you can look into, and I would like to say thank you for watching my video. Please subscribe, and as always, if you have comments or any material you would like to see, leave a comment so I can know, so I can make this channel better for all of us. Please turn on your notification bell if you subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a good one. Bye.